You may have recently read a story in the news about the rates of, or the trends, I guess I should say, of women in local government in our counties. And I'm sure that Dr. Madsen will expound a little bit more about that, but she also did quite an extensive survey into women in local government in our cities and towns. And that's what we kind of hope that you talk about a little bit more today, Dr. Madsen, because we have a lot of representatives from the 249 cities and towns throughout our state, and we're interested to hear what sort of difference we're making, what sort of trends we're setting now. So thank you.
Oh, you're so good, Susie. You just transitioned so nicely. Oh my, I've been worried about this happening, but never had it really happen. And I can see folks, and there's hardly anybody on, but if there's anybody, oh, it looks like I'm on two cameras for some reason. I would love, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Don. I would love to see you. It's good to see you. So I am a little crazy, but I'm going to settle down and do my presentation now. And actually, I left some space, to be honest, in terms of really wanting to get some Q&A. So it looks like we have about 43 people online. I don't know if you can see both of me. I'm seeing two of me. That's not really fun. But let me share my screen. And I'm going to pop on pretty quick and just start with the presentation that I pulled together. But please, if you have questions, I probably won't be able to see the chat too much, but I'll come in and out of it. So again, I mentioned the Utah Women in Leadership Project and what our mission is. And I think many of you, thank you, Melissa, it's nice to see you on camera. So this is where I was on the phone. So last year, we talked about, and I don't know if I could see you all, I could have you raise your hand and tell me how many of you were at the presentation last year, but I really went through why it's important. And so I don't want to go through that again specifically, but I did want to tell you one study that really came out in the past year that supports why more women need to use their voices and lead. And this specifically relates to women and innovation and creativity and decision making. And what's interesting about this fairly new study, it came out of the UK and it came out of a military setting. And in the UK for about 10 years, when things are super complex, they call them wicked problems. I love that term, like complex problem, wicked problems. So I use that term a bit. And what the study said, that it was a military setting and they gave teams of all men, and then some teams had one woman, and they gave them complex problems. In fact, what they've said is if they're simple problems, it really doesn't matter if it's all women, all men, but if there's complex problems or wicked problems, that's what this study was measuring. In every case, except for one, they decided that the team that was an exception had a one woman, but they didn't listen to her. In every other team, when there was a woman and they listened to her and it was complex problems, the study said that absolutely the team did the course and the complex problem solving much better, even if there was one woman. I thought that was such a fascinating study. Last year, I also talked about the status of women in Utah, and we went through, I remember giving you this, like we went through some of the statistics, and I wasn't going to do that today, but you are welcome to ask me some questions about that. But as you know, we have studies on sexual assault and domestic violence and voting and all kinds of things on our website. The new studies, however, that are really have been coming out, the first one on state government, and that came out in August. And then we just recently, on September 2nd, released a study on, we had data, mostly full data, but partial data on some counties. We really struggled getting data from a few counties on women leaders in government in the counties. And then on October 6th, we're going to release a research study. I'm going to give you a bit of it today on women in Utah municipalities. And the cool thing about this study is there's some cities and towns we didn't get full data from, but many of them we did, most of them we did, but we at least got partial data on every single city and town in the state of Utah. And then I'm just going to give you a little bit. We're not going to release this for a couple months, but we're at the end of the analysis on this last one. And this was, we had 420, like 435 women in Utah government at all levels give qualitative, and man, did we have some rich data, or qualitative results on really the things that impact them positively, the opportunities that they had to develop their leadership, and also some of the challenges. And a section, I'm not going to give you that today, but a section on advice. So what are women who work in government today saying, you know, what advice would they give to other folks joining, or other women that really want to become leaders? And by the way, I just termed that in a way that I don't like to, because often people say, let's help women who want to be leaders. Okay, think about that for a minute. There's a lot of socialization for girls and boys. I mean, boys are raised to see themselves as future leaders. Girls, not so much. And so when you get to the point where you are in your careers, many more men, because of socialization, because of all kinds of things, we can stop during it and talk about that if that's interesting. They just see themselves as leaders. And we as women, and particularly I would say in Utah, in some settings at least, we don't aspire. So I caught myself there when I said, well, let's help women who want to be leaders. Well, what we need to do here in Utah is actually help girls and women aspire to be leaders, because if you don't aspire or want to be leaders, then you don't move forward. So we need to be helping with all of those things. Last year, I also talked about confidence for a while, and last year we also talked about challenges. So just reminding, I think many of you may have been at the session I did last year. So highlights for today, what I wanted to do was to, and I've got a little bit shorter pocket of time than I had hoped for, but I appreciate Susie taking the reins and moving things forward. So what I wanted to do was really talk about the status of women in local government, a few nuggets, and I'm happy if you email me. I've done a transition to Utah State University, so susan.madsen@usu.edu is my new email, if you want a PDF of some of these slides as well. So depending on the time, I want to go through that, but I want to leave plenty of time for some struggles and challenges, some strategies and initiatives, and then a few tips or recommendations on creating cultures where women can actually thrive. So I talk often about women striving to be leaders, but I don't know, I'm moving to, you know, we're always striving, but can we arrive at a place in our work that we actually thrive? Don't you think there's a difference between striving and thriving? I've been thinking about that a bunch. I can see like 4 of you, so nod, a few of you. Thanks. Okay, thank you. I much rather, okay, Susan, thank you. I like looking at people when I'm speaking. But that's, oh man, you know, if we had like a whole day to just meet together, not on Zoom, especially with my internet problems today, that would be great to spend some time and really get your input and your feedback on that as well. So let me just run through, I'm going to go through this first part fairly quickly, and then I want to wrestle into some of what we've found in the research, specifically on the challenges and opportunities, and so those things. So of course, recent events underscore the need for government and the democratic governance process in general to embrace diversity, right, at all levels. Organizations we found with diverse leadership teams, both men and women working together, really are more innovative, more resilient, make better strategic decisions. You know, this is not an opinion. The research studies in the hundreds, if not thousands now, continue to support that this is the case. There's still a lot of people that don't understand though that. The benefits of gender equity can be found in any organization, including government structures. So I wanted to first, I mean, that's kind of the backdrop, but I wanted to get into and just share a few things, not going to take too much time. First, because I know there's some folks from county that join, I don't know what percentage, do a little bit of our county status of women in Utah. And I will tell you, most of our briefs, we are able to compare to other states, compare nationally. But what we found is that actually these 3 studies we are doing are groundbreaking. No other state has done research like this. So we're at the forefront of actually getting deep into counting percentages, figuring out where we're at. So the bad news is we don't know where we compare to other people. The good news is now we know, and now we have this data, and we'll be able to track changes in the future. So you can see on this slide, we received or we found through websites almost 2,000 information on 2,000 leadership positions that represent all kinds of employees in leadership positions in the 29 counties. And overall, I have to say I was a bit surprised that we found in county government, in state, by the way, we found about 39% of leadership positions. And again, these are supervisory, managerial, and leadership positions. So we really went down to that supervisory level. We really wanted people that managed other people in our sample. So you can see of the elected is the lowest, appointed, merit employees, part-time. You can see some of those numbers, but that's what we found in county governments around the state. And this is going to be probably hard for you to see, but this report is online already. If you look at the right side of this, you'll see the numbers that we found in each and the percentages in the county governments. And you see the class of city, the size of city, and we found some interesting findings in this one, and as well as the state, as well as the municipalities, and how those fell out. But you can see your county, you can see Carbon and Daggett. We've had some of our rural counties, to be honest, that are quite high. One of the things that's really kind of skewed this data is Salt Lake. As you can see, Salt Lake is huge and it has so many employees in it. And so because they're right about 50%, and I know I've been in touch and really connected with Salt Lake County through the years, they've had some very strong diversity programs for many years, women's leadership, women-only leadership programs, and some other things as well. But you can see those on that screen. In terms of leadership level, we divided up into frontline, senior, executive, and elected officials. And you can see that some of those percentages. Frontline, of course, some of the highest percentages, no surprise there, down to elected officials. So that's how it's breaking out. And in some ways, we look at this and say, oh, we're doing better than we thought. And you know what? Some counties are definitely doing better than other counties, right? Salt Lake really has held a lot of those numbers with county and really helps with the rest of the data on that. So we also looked at typology, which you can see some of the definitions on this slide. We weren't able to get this information for cities and towns, but we did for the counties. So are they administrative, more leadership roles? Are they distributive, more of agencies like the transportation and energy? Are they more redistributive? Education, social services, healthcare. Are you guessing where they're going to fall out? And then regulatory. And let me put on the results to see if this is a surprise. Not too much of a surprise, right? So we're finding the women in the, and again, the full brief is already on our website, utwomen.org is the website under the research tab, so you'll get all of the background. But you can see, not surprisingly, We found this in our state analysis, worked with the state human resources area to get tons of data for the state, that we do find most of the women in that third column down, you can see, and then in regulatory as well. Oftentimes, if you look at the bottom chart, oftentimes you do see most of the women in government, from what we've uncovered with the literature, in the bigger organizations. And you do see that in Salt Lake County. But look, it did not follow the trends. Usually it goes from biggest county all the way to the smallest being the less percentage, the lowest percentage of women. But do you see this? So the smallest couple really have quite high percentages as well. So that was a surprise to us in the county brief as well. Now let's shift. That's just a little bit of the information there. Again, the state data is there already online. But this brief is not launched yet. So it is, I'm giving you some good, the first look at the data here that you're seeing. So you can see there are over, close to 26,000 municipal employees working for in our 247 cities and towns. And we worked with, and by the way, I will say that April Townsend, Dr. April Townsend, took the lead on this project. Representative Candace Perucci was a main researcher on getting this data, and Brooke Smith, oh my gosh, I just blanked on Brooke's last name. I think Brooke, is it Brooke Smith? Who's from, oh, Brooke, sorry if you're listening. I'm pretty sure that's your last name. I'm a little flustered today. But they did so much work in calling and emailing and going through websites to really pull in this data so we could be as accurate as we could be. So you can see. And what we found is, and I'm swearing you all to secrecy because we're going to launch it and it's going to hit the press on October 6th. So appreciate that. But again, the state numbers were about 38, 39% women. The counties were about 42% women, and now the municipalities are about 29. So you can see that's significantly lower than the others, but you'll also see down below that the appointed positions are the ones that are actually for the municipalities, the highest percentage of women. You see elected, and we have other briefs that really measure elected in more depth and merit. You can see where those are, but appointed was the highest where we found women leaders for the state. Now here we go. Who was the highest? We have a lot of small towns that hit the highest percentage of women. The very highest, Marysville, Vale, Town, Castles Valley, Dutch John, Helper, Rockville, Trenton Town, each at 66, almost 67%. And you can see the towns that hit the next highest. And I'm calling out a few of the lowest, and there's a lot in the middle. And our brief, when it comes out, in the last 2 or 3 pages, has every single city on it and where I don't think I put it in this, but if we have a little time, I can pull it up so you can look real quick. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but you can see some of the highest. There's a significant difference between some cities. Now, if you look between urban and rural, and we ended up needing to do that by like the cities, and then we did it by counties actually, but the cities within the counties. But we're seeing, at least in Utah, those rural cities slightly higher percentages than our urban counties. Isn't that interesting? I'm just like, wish I could see you all. But but in terms of the number of employees, look at that. So it actually, the smaller have some of the highest numbers. And that makes sense in terms of what we found for rural urban, right? Again, with any level, with the state government, with the counties, and with the cities and towns, we could not find another state that did what we're doing. So we could not, so we really may get some national media on this and some national publications out on this. And I would say we can be at the front edge here in Utah about saying, hey, we want to measure this. You know, some people do ask me from time to time, why am I doing all these reports? Why are we measuring this? I know most of you get this already, but when we measure things, we can actually make more clear strategies and goals, and then we measure it again. Most of our snapshots and briefs, we want to update every 3 or 4 years. We can say what's different. You know, we can actually do things and have some measurement. And when we do that, we're more likely to create and have change. So classification, if you look at this again, you know, in terms of the largest cities, we're seeing about 25%. It dips, and then some of the smallest, we're seeing some of the highest numbers. So there's, you know, you can't really ask me why exactly, because we haven't gotten down into the data to understand. I mean, we haven't done the qualitative and looked up the towns. We were just getting the status, the basic numbers. That's been enough work for us. But I think there could be some very cool stories about why some of the women, some of these smaller towns, so many of them within the state of Utah have these numbers. And of course, do all of you know that years ago, and I can't remember right now, I know I've told the story, but it's been a while, that Kanab had like all their city council members, and at least an elected position, were women at one time. Does anyone remember what date? I'm not forgetting. It was a long time ago though, because I've seen pictures of it. And so it's fun to, I know I have a PDF of an article that really went into some detail with that. And then, so the leadership level. So look at how we've divided that. Of course, the front line, and we tried to limit it, not perfect, but we tried to get people who at least oversee some other people. And then you can see senior, and then the directors were at our executive level. And then at our top level, we really wrestled how to divide these up. And Representative Perucci did a great job at really trying to dig in that and figure out what made sense, trying to take bigger cities and smaller towns together to make that work. So you can see actually some of our highest numbers, and interestingly, we're in that executive level. So typically when you look at research, it usually falls out where you see the most at the bottom level of women's leadership and the least at the top. So we're not following typical trends, and that would be something at that executive level to really explore why are we seeing that. And we can get down into some of, you know, some of Salt Lake and other major cities may impact some of that and some of their practices as well. So this is some municipalities by the region area. The southeastern area of the state is the winner for the most women serving. So that's an interesting thing too. All of these we can explore in deeper ways. So those are some of the, and there's so much more rich data. I'm gonna stop sharing screen for just a minute. And look, Brooke Smith, I see you. Yes, I was right. I'm like, I have like 3 Brooks I'm speaking to these days that I'm working with in different ways. And so I thought it was Brooke Thomas. And then, oh, I'm so glad. Brooke, thank you so much for your work on this. So Brooke is in Murray, and you're deputy, oh, help me with your title, Brooke. Can you turn it on?
Yep. Deputy City Recorder and Purchasing Agent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been worked just super closely with Representative Perucci, and they did. My dream would have been to get to all all of the cities and towns, but I thought it was going to be impossible. And even though we don't have like perfect data on everything, we do have data on everything, like at least partial data. So Brooke was a rock star on that. Thank you so much for that. So now what I would like to do is actually move into, unless there's burning questions, let me see, we have till noon. So we have a little more time. I've got 3 other sections I want to get to, but if there's some burning questions before we get into the struggles and challenges, let's go ahead and take them. I know there's all kinds of chat. I see 14 and I haven't looked at a one. So, so is there anything at this point before I dive in that people have questions about? And Brooke is here, which I'm happy about. She can help answer the questions as well.
So Susan, would you like us to run another poll so that you can see the diversity of people that are in attendance today?
That would, I saw it briefly on my phone, but as you could see, most people don't see me flustered. You have seen me totally flustered today.
That's great. We've actually had a lot more people join in. So we're going to go ahead and just run the poll again, and then that'll give us a chance to see the diversity of people that are here. We've got some people that just love attending conferences. We've got a few mayors.
Great, perfect. What should I put for me? Just love attending conferences.
I mean, that's kind of where I am too. I'm like, all
right. I'll do that one. So I know you want to spend some time too getting into some of the challenges, but I'm glad we were able to move through some of the major findings. It's going to be a cool release. Again, October 6th is going to be the date that it's formally released to the public, so you'll be able to get the full copy, and I think you'll be interested in that. So,
Dr. Madsen, Summer Palmer had an interesting comment and question, and I don't know, Summer, are you there to turn your mic on and you can ask directly, or do you want me to paraphrase what you're saying?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, I love the breakout between cities and counties and their female elected officials and those who are on the administration side, because to me, there's 2 different issues to tackle there. You either have a population of people who encourage and elect females to represent them, which is great. But then you also have a hiring issue potentially when those elected officials get in place. There's administration that usually does the hiring for those cities, and so even though there's female elected officials, they may not be on the hiring panels for those positions in the city. And so there's 2 different issues, I guess. And I'd love to see work on both sides, I guess.
Yeah, just so you know, we will be updating. I have a couple of people working on it right now, updating our elected official snapshot or brief that will come out in 2021. And that one will get into, it's an update. It'll be a 4-year update. The years just keep going by really fast for me, but a 4-year update on, we'll do all, state legislature, executive positions at government level, Congress, but we go down to mayors and then city councils as well and school boards. And so even though we have a little bit in this brief about elected officials, just know that in the next probably 6 months, there'll be a really good update. That data is not like easy to come by. We have to in the last time Candace and I were working on it, and I called and got a gas station attendant in Junction, Utah or something, who gave me the number of the wife of somebody, and I called her and she just told me the names from her memory. I mean, that's how we got some of the data on these smaller towns. It's kind of funny. But you're right. I mean, one thing that Brooke can help me out with this, I think that we found just 5 city managers or city assistants that were women.
Yeah, so right now there's 5 city managers or city administrators. And that has gone up from a couple years ago. Before there was just 3. And then on a side note, for elected officials, at one point I'm in my master's program at SUU. So I did a little bit of research a year and a half ago. At one point there was more elected female mayors than there are city managers. And so Summer has some great points. That is it easier to be elected into into an office as a female rather than hired in a high level administrative position? There's some great studies that can be in there.
So I want to give a shout out though to the Utah City County Managers Association. In the past year, maybe it's been a little longer than a year, they've actually asked me to do 2 keynotes, 1 in each. And they're mostly men that are at this conference. And one of them had about 200 men, and the other one, it was the same year. I think both were in 2019. But the first year, they gave me an hour and a half. And I came down and I roamed and I did little workshoppy. But then they were so interesting. And these are men, mostly men, wanting to hire or wanting to understand the dynamics more, feeling like they want to hire, not sure what to do. But they asked me to come back, and I brought Robin Scribner, who was my assistant director at the time, and they gave me another hour and a half to go through deeper questions. They had sent me the questions before, and oh my heck, I get to say heck in Utah. Oh my heck. Very interesting and deep. So I have to, not that everything is solved, but I was really encouraged by that organization, really, and many men have kept in touch with me and asking for more resources. So that's the start of some of the changes. But you're right. I mean, it's kind of a complex thing. You can have the elected officials, and in some cities, and you know this, some organizations, they have a lot more influence on day-to-day, and some they don't, and some managers listen, probably more than others. But I am really encouraged, I guess I should say, by the interest in both men and women in many of our counties and cities in the state of Utah. It is, to be honest, deep work. It's deep work. This is not surface work. This is deep work, and there's a difference. There is a difference. I've been doing a lot of unconscious bias training. I have worked on how to teach it for a lot of years, because about 75% has been shown not to work or to be harmful. So I worked a long time. I have been actually doing a lot of unconscious bias training, 3 hours. I'll just do it 3 hours. And to even get, so we see some of the issues with gender and race, of course, and other things. And it is all deep work. And it's not just deep work for white men. Can I say that? It's deep work for me. I'm a white woman, and I'm of this culture, how we say that, not really say religion. And it's deep work for me. So it's deep work for everyone. But there's some that are starting to step forward and want. Women, many women are doing this, not all, but many women. But I'm real pleased there are more men coming up here as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen again and move through a few of the challenges and some of the struggles. So here is the background on this other study. This is just a touch of some of the results on another study on government. Yes, women in government. We will have a total of 4 studies released within the 6-month period just about you, people that are on this call. So this particular study probably won't be, it's actually not slotted till January. We may have it out a little bit earlier, but I'm looking at where other studies are. So this study has been conducted, and Dr. April Townsend, who is been on as an independent contractor, researcher, volunteer through the years, was the lead on this. And she worked for Salt Lake County government for her whole career, which was at least 30 years. So she knows women in government well. So we put a survey out, had about 430 people respond from all levels of government, workers in the state of Utah. And here we go. Here are the top 8 leadership advancement challenges that were noted. So do you see that top one? This is in order of frequency. Let me move so I can see Dawn, Melissa, Holly, and Sherry's picture at least. I need to be looking at live people. So thank you. So there's so much more in the brief that April and I just finished, but she did a great job of analyzing all the qualitative data that came in, and we have some quantitative data. The number one, and I don't have the percentages here, was a challenge for advancing in leadership in government in the state of Utah is navigating biased attitudes. Is that shocking? No? Yes, Holly, you're nodding. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So navigating biased attitudes is the first. The second, religious or Utah culture, and some of the things dealing, and in the brief, we'll go deeper, but that's not for today. The lack of organizational support. What was interesting in another piece we did, and I think I have that slide a little bit later. Sorry, I have some people talking, my husband. We actually had women saying in some, not as many, but that their areas, that their departments actually supported them. So it's a real mix of people feeling in certain cities or towns or the state government that they have support, and some feeling no. So, but this is number 3. So we have probably more that said no, there's a lack of support, no opportunities for advancement. But we did particularly highlight women, especially in rural Utah, feeling like a lack of opportunities, a lack of support from men, and do you see this? Other women. So that's interesting. We still find that, and there's a lot of research why women do that. I don't know. If we have a few minutes, we could talk about that if that rises to the top of interest. Feeling like their voices are stifled, lack of pay equity, caregiving responsibilities, hiring and interview processes, and social exclusion. And of course, those are related to which we see it widely in the state of Utah, men, golfing or doing activities that they're just not thinking, or it could be conscious or unconscious, inviting women to going to lunch with the men, not thinking to invite women, other kinds of social exclusion. I put this is in my last book. It's a chapter by a friend, Laura is her name. This is a really interesting, so I'm going to explain it, and I want you to think about your own city or town, or if you're state government or county. So think about whatever area or organization or entity you're in. So this is a theoretical model, but it has really good direct application, I think, to what you can think about. So it's called gender consciousness. So a lot of people years ago used to say, let's try and be gender blind. Do you remember hearing that? Like, let's not notice. Guess what? You can't do that. It doesn't work. In fact, if you say, I'm going to be colorblind, that doesn't work either. What the research is quite clear on is that doesn't work. If you try to do, it's because we have so much unconscious bias. Most of what we do in the world is unconscious. So, what is the level of consciousness of gender in your organization? Awareness and action are the 2 elements. First, is there pretty much low awareness and low action, like nobody's doing anything and they don't get it, okay? So that's one. If we go over to the right, sometimes there's a bunch of action, like check off the box, like we did this, we did sexual harassment training, we did this and this, but there's not a lot of awareness, deeper awareness, not that deep work that goes into understanding. but a bunch of things. So if we go up on the awareness, you can have high awareness. So people are doing some deep work, but there's not really anything happening. I like this term, consciously unconscious. And then the best place, of course, in terms of where we see more women, and I'll use the word I used before, thrive. Where we see the women actually thrive is high action, high awareness. So with the awareness, there's depth, not just, oh, this is a problem, or let's put things into place, you know, that's better than nothing. But there's also, you know, this deep work, but let's do actual strategic, cultural change, deep work to make things happen. I thought I would throw this in just so you have a framework of where am I at now? Now that would be an interesting poll, right? Can you do an anonymous poll to see where all of you think your organizations are at? Like high awareness, low action. I don't know if you want to, Susie, you can put that poll out. Ooh, that would be interesting though, now that I'm thinking about it. And some of the challenges that were noted on that other slide really go towards this slide, and those are societal norms. So the underlying Utah culture, men and women working relationships. I'll tell you, I just did an unconscious bias session yesterday, and that was the biggest question at the end, was how do we do, from white men, I have to say, on, I just don't know how to navigate the men and women working relationships. And although I feel like saying occasionally, it's not rocket science, I will not be that bold in those settings, or that stupid in some settings. I don't know what it is. So the wage gap, role congruence bias. So that is super strong in the state of Utah. And you see women should do this, men should do this. Social expectation, women have different roles about getting frustrated. That's not just in Utah, it's all of these we see every place. Negotiation, women naturally are not socialized to negotiate like men, but many can do very well. I mean, we can do exceptionally well, but if women are trained and they do negotiate, then they're pushed against because they're like, why are you asking for more money? Or why are you? So it's not just about preparing women, it's about sometimes getting some pushback. Focus on appearance, objectification, and people, I do have people say, well, we're probably okay with that in Utah. Wrong. We're one of the highest in the nation on cosmetic surgery. We are most research around more religious states, and there's fabulous studies on, oh my gosh, I could tell you a lot on some of the more religious studies, not necessarily the Latter-day Saint religion, but religious societies in general have higher levels of objectification of women. And that is measured in many studies by pornography rates. So that's interesting. And then biases in systems and processes. So invisible masculine culture, there's some of those things as well. One of the things that I thought I would talk about in this section, okay, just looking ahead. Let me put these up. Are you dizzy yet? I'm gonna look at you all for a minute. So anybody that can put their camera on, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Susie, for doing that. So I can look at your fabulous faces. So a lot of people do not understand what benevolent sexism is. So are you ready for it is alive and well in the state of Utah, but a lot of people don't understand. I just talked about this yesterday too. And it's really interesting information for men and for women. So there's hostile sexism. We see a lot of actually, we see a lot of both, unfortunately. But hostile sexism still plays out today. I would hope that would be gone by now, but I get stories every week on email from people that things like inappropriate jokes where people talk about women's boobs right in front of women sometimes, or behind the back. I mean, that's hostile sexism. Saying, oh, that's women's work, that's hostile sexism. A couple weeks ago, I had a partner of a law firm that was a woman that said, behind closed doors, discussion about, she has a husband that works, he has a wife that stays home, he should make more money. Okay, that's illegal. Okay, but those things. Okay, so what is benevolent sexism? So let me give you a couple of examples, and you will start figuring out how you're seeing it, right? So here are a couple of examples. Let's say that Robin, I'll pick on Robin for this. Let's say Robin, and usually I pick on a man, but we'll pick on Robin today. She could do this too. She would never do this, but I'm. So let's say Robin has, let's say Suzanne working for her, and Robin is going to this evening event, and the governor is going to be there, and people, the mayor, I don't know where you work, Robin, but important people, let's say CEOs, important folks are going to be there, right? And Suzanne works for you, and you know, she would be good to invite to come, but it's an evening thing. And Suzanne has 3 kids, and you know she likes to be with their kids, and she likes to go to their baseball games or soccer games. So you're not even going to ask her. You're not even going to ask her because you're trying to be nice. Okay, picture this more as a man doing this, right? That makes sense. He's really coming from a good place. But maybe Robin says to Suzanne, well, you could come, but it's not a big deal or whatever. So what is Suzanne? And Suzanne goes, oh, I won't go then. But she is missing connections. She's missing possible sponsorships and mentoring or just getting to know people. So that's one way. Here's another way. So let's pick on Dawn now. So Dawn, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. So this actually, it happens more men to women, but it can happen with Dawn. So Dawn, Brooke works for you, and let's say Joe. And they're both, Joe and Brooke have worked together, and they have both been assertive, have been task-oriented, have been results-oriented, have just driven. And they have both been compassionate and empathetic and teamwork and collaborative and these things. So if Brooke and Joe ask Dawn for a letter of recommendation because they want a promotion or they, you know, something. If Dawn, and this happens a little bit more with men, but it can play out with women. If Dawn is not paying attention, what she will do is write a letter for Joe that uses words like results-oriented, driven, task, you know, all these things that really help them move forward. And Dawn really appreciates Brooke too, and values her just as highly as Joe. But if she's not paying attention in that letter, she will use words primarily with Brooke like, are you getting where I'm going? Compassionate and teamwork and all these great things. And when we as women look at these letters, we're like, how nice. But guess what the research says? Yeah, it does not serve us well often, maybe in certain positions, but a lot of people say, well, I want someone that gets things done. And Brooke's letter says she's so nice. She probably just stands around and chats all the time. She probably, I know that's not true. Brooke gets things done, but you know what I'm talking about. So those are a couple of examples. Companies that have international assignments do it all the time. Don't invite women because they assume is the word, assume that she has too much on her plate, that we want to be kind. Is this making sense? So that's why it's called benevolent sexism. There's so many ways that plays out. And I would argue that plays out a lot in the state of Utah. Is this sounding familiar to any of you though? I mean, and we can do it. I probably have done it to other women, really wanting to, what the benevolent sexism research calls, protect. we protect women. So, you know, she's got stuff on her plate. One county, I'll share one more, because one county in the state of Utah, I won't say which one, but I did some unconscious bias training for employees. Actually, a couple of the people that were really interested in really doing deep work had a big assignment come at them and thought, oh, we wanted to give it to this particular woman. She would be fabulous. And then they thought, and this was like a week after they did unconscious bias training with me, then they were like, oh, she's got too much on her plate. We don't want to even bring it up. And then they both like, oh my gosh, we just had unconscious bias training and we need to ask her. And then they went and asked her and she was like, I've been wanting to do that exact thing. I will clear things off my plate. And they were like, whoa. I mean, oh my gosh, we almost blew it. So does that make sense? Is this all making sense to you? And you know, I took a little bit longer than I had planned on this, but I think it's important for us to know, you know, to really know and understand. I'm not going to take time to go through. I'm watching the time carefully, but I have this chart that really goes through a variety of barriers, but I want to get to some strategies now. So what we found, and these are particular things in the brief that we're not going to send out in for a few more months, but the number one main chunk of strategies that women, that we, the 400 women that provided feedback when we analyzed them, the number one thing that helped them advance in leadership was personal. They did it themselves. They took risks. They took opportunities to learn. They themselves wanted to gain experience, prove themselves. Many of them talked about going back and having some support as well, organizational, but going back for college degrees. Those college degrees, particularly bachelor's and master's, really helped them move forward in leadership. They received support and help from friends and family. They worked hard themselves. They strengthened their own confidence. They had women who were role models and mentors that helped them, but they reached out themselves. So again, the number one that we heard from women here in Utah was the personal strategies they did themselves were the best things to advance. Number two main chunk was organizational strategy. So what did the town do? What did the city do? What did the county or state do? So first, some said organizational culture was good, and some actually brought in training and development, you know, sending you out for training and development, having opportunities, of course, like this was helpful. But some of the larger cities particularly really appreciated the training and development to help them grow, including only a few really talked about, and most of them came from Salt Lake County, that women-only opportunities to really meet together and do some deep work. And I know April was part of bringing and developing the Utah or the Salt Lake County particular women's leadership program that was run there. Has been, oh, I'm not sure, Brooke, I don't know if you paid attention to that, but I think it's been going for a while, maybe 8 years is coming to mind, and some local trainings and things like that. So the women felt like those were some strategies that were helpful. And then the third main chunk really was the networks of support. I will tell you that the biggest one was when they had a supportive supervisor. When their supervisor, whoever that was supportive, that made the biggest difference. So, and then colleagues, of course, family members, and seeing women lead still hits the top of the list. We need as women to see other women in leadership. That gives us hope, that helps us form a stronger leadership identity. And so what we know is boys, more than girls, boys are raised with more leadership identities and girls are not. So we have to help women of all ages, including girls, young women, teens, college students. We have to work harder with women. And so some people ask me, so why do we need a women's only thing? By the way, that's one of the reasons, is because women more than men do not have a leadership identity. So, and secondly, there are some things, not all your leadership training should be women only. But I will tell you that I know the research as well as anybody in the worldwide on this research, that there are things and development, deeper development, not just here's how to network, here's how to run a meeting, here's how to do, those skills. That deeper identity work, that deeper purpose and calling work, that deeper navigating unconscious bias, navigating, how to deal with my voice being stifled. Those kinds of things are much different when you talk to women. And even if there's one man in the room, it changes the conversation. So that deeper work to have women only. And then the last section, I'm looking at time, and let me just go through. Email me if you want to share slides. I don't want to go out widely. The county brief, I will just tell you in that brief, utwomen.org, you can get to that. This slide is really some things that have already been published on how to recommendations for county. And they're the same for cities. We put other ones in our municipality. See who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. For we are the ones we have been waiting for. I get a little teary-eyed on that. Oftentimes we say, and especially I've seen with women, is who's going to lead? Who can we support? Are you following me? I mean, who? But I will tell you that people on this call and people we have influences are, we're the ones. We're the ones. We're the ones that need to formally or informally use our voices. We're the ones that need to prepare ourselves through education, through all the things that we've talked about, to have more confidence, to get rid of that imposter syndrome that creeps up in so many women, to figure out how and where and even why we need to use our voices. So we'll step forward with that calling or purpose that we feel in our lives, to not feel like it's selfish, but to impact people around us, to impact our peers, to impact the residents of our communities, to impact organizations in the state of Utah, to make Utah a better place in which all people thrive, including women, including people of color. And I think we all have the responsibility to do that. And so I just appreciate your time. And I always have to get teary-eyed at least once in a presentation.
Good for you, Susan.
I would love, we have like 4 minutes, would love a few questions. Are you seeing anything, Brooke or Susie, on the chat?
So we've had a lot of people talking about the different support groups that are out there for women. APA Utah has one. Susan mentioned that ULCT has been working to have more specific programming for women. So, any recommendations for ideas of programming that they could do. And then there's also a group, Women Leading Government, that's tailored towards women that are working in administration.
Is that national, Susie?
I think these are, I know APA Utah is like for the state, but there are national levels of it. Brooke, what about the Women Leading Government? Is that a state chapter of a national organization?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So we, just so you know, I think we have these groups on our website, but if we don't, we sure need to get them. But we have a web page, again, utwomen.org, that has all the women's groups and networks and associations and student chapters on campuses. in the whole state. And we are in the process of reaching out again. We usually have a fall where everybody can get together, and we usually get 70 people.
But I would say that maybe if everybody that's on this call could check those resources that Susan's mentioned, and if you know of a group that she doesn't have there, then that's information that I'm sure they would love to have. So let's just make sure that we're a resource for each other.